Welcome to Sports BKC, the Kansas City Stars Sports Podcast. It's Friday, March 20th. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and we have a long episode today, but I think you'll enjoy it. Kevin Harlan called his first NCAA Tournament game right after leaving college in the early 1980s and is a fixture on March Madness broadcasts. Like just about everyone else who loves the tournament, Kevin found himself at home this week and not at a first and second round site because of the COVID-19 coronavirus. But it gave us the opportunity to catch up with Kevin for this podcast in a column you'll find on kansascity.com today and in Sunday's print editions of The Star by Vahe Gregorian. Kevin was gracious enough with his time, and we covered many topics from the NCAA Tournament to his start in the business, on how he manages his travel. You know, he calls the NFL and NBA in addition to college basketball. And we finished by talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and what championships mean to our region. Vahe and I teamed up for this conversation with Kevin, who was at his home in Kansas City Thursday. We hope you enjoy. Hey, so where were you going to be today?
They had not told us. They only let us know on Sunday night at the end of Selection Sunday, about 2 or 3 hours after that. And so that's, a year ago at this time I was in Des Moines, and that was so fun. It's so many great teams up there, but they usually just tell us on Sunday night where we're going to go.
Okay. But you knew who you're going to work with, right? The pairings had been announced.
Yeah, they keep us all kind of together. We had Dana Jacobson on our sideline again they kind of split her between news and sports, and Dan Bonner was doing, I think, his 38th consecutive tournament, 40th overall, and that is about as long as anybody. I think it ties Bill Raftery, and then Reggie Miller was gonna also be on our crew, obviously.
Kevin, one of the things that is sort of front and center, of course, is just picturing like how this unfurled for you. And we got a chance to see Peter King's sort of play-by-play on you, but what was that like as one of the busiest people we know saw this kind of come screeching to a halt?
Well, with Peter, it was kind of interesting because I just finished taping a documentary for the Green Bay Packers, a 10-part documentary on their 100-year history. And the Packers had asked me what 3 people I would like to have a copy with streaming instructions sent to, have them get a copy of this, people in the NFL. And the first person I thought of was Peter King, and the second was Bill Belichick, because he loves NFL history. He just loves talking about old players, coaches, stadiums, teams, and the third was Greg Cosell at NFL Films. So those were my 3 guys. And as I was changing planes in Chicago last Wednesday, I was texting Peter, "Hey, could you give me your address?" And then that's how this kind of got started, and that's how he knew I was going through this. But I was supposed to be in Milwaukee last Wednesday night for the Thursday TNT broadcast for the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks, and found out as I was getting on my connecting flight at O'Hare on a Woj bomb. Woj had put out something on an ESPN alert about the league suspending operations, and so I quickly went to the board and saw that there was a flight to Kansas City, and raced down the corridor and concourse crossing and everything else, and got to the plane, and somehow I kind of talked my way on after some very helpful agents maneuvered things around, and so that's when I found out that was done. And the next day, of course, the NCAA followed, and after that, it's just been this cavalcade of one conference tournament, one league suspending play, one big event like the Kentucky Derby, and all these other great events, all taking a hiatus and postponing things until there's more clarity.
I see Peter used the term that when you saw Woj's tweet, you semi-gasped and got out of line, and I wonder what the feeling was, but also I wonder if you could have envisioned that was sort of the tipping point for all these shutdowns. I mean, it really was the pivotal moment, it appears.
I think it was when Rudy Gobert, the Utah Jazz player, had the symptoms and was now under inspection and observation and being given the test. I think it just showed, commissioners and team presidents and owners and conference commissioners that if one person gets it, it's gonna really affect the entire team. And if the entire team can't play, then how can you have games and how can you have tournaments and how can you carry on? So it was inevitable that was probably the way it was going to, the dominoes were going to kind of hit. So, but I guess on my way to the airport, I heard that the Big 12 was finished, and then earlier that week we have our NCAA meetings in New York, and they had been canceled. Every year, we all as a group from CBS and the Turner people on that side that are involved all get together in New York, and there are hundreds of us. And we get a presentation from Dan Gavitt, who's the man that runs the tournament for the NCAA, the president. We hear from directors of officiating and everything, tournament relations. All these people give us these presentations, and we all get together and have 2 days of discussion, and they show us graphics, and they all kinds of things are dealt with, and that was canceled. So we knew that the tournament was on the ropes to begin with when they began to say, well, we're just going to play with the teams and not the fans. And that almost didn't seem realistic, and then sure enough, everything kind of fell into place, and that was a week ago or so, and here we are, and what would be the first day of the tournament, and the three of us are not in some place around the country covering local teams or national stories, and I'm sure for you guys, it's got to be as weird as it is for me. This is where every March, you two and myself would find ourselves, right in the thick of the beginning of the tournament.
A word Blair and I have used, I hope I'm not speaking for Blair here, is it's a little disorienting. I think that's one thing we're come to terms with in a lot of ways, and certainly with the tournament not here, but also everything from how we interact to the fact that, we're not really able to be with you in person when we might ordinarily have. And I guess my question there, Kevin, is kind of how are you processing just that, the sense of being grounded and the sense of sort of distancing all that? What's that been like for you, someone as busy as you?
Well, the three of us are very busy, and so I'll be just as curious to hear your answer, but I'll start and just say that it's like the season has ended, the tournament has come to a close, it's now in the rearview mirror, and I'm waiting for the start of the NBA playoffs. There's always that week or 10 days in between the end of the tournament and the beginning of the NBA postseason, and that's what this kind of feels like. I'm out here on our porch, and the weather is nice. It's a warm day. We're speaking on Thursday, so it was in the 60s and 70s today, and it's nice, and there are buds on the trees, and people are walking around, and flowers are coming up, and this always reminds me of the end of the tournament, the beginning of the NBA playoffs, kind of that in between for me. But what about you, Blair? I mean, you've covered this tournament and by both you guys have. You've covered it as long as I have. I'm sure this is. And by the way, people need to understand that we're all busy, but the truth be told, the people like Blair and Vi that are writing columns and daily stories and reporting and giving opinions on things, the work that goes into those far exceeds anything that we as broadcasters go through. I can guarantee you that, and I've told these two to their face, that a lot of the information we get is from the hard work of these reporters. So knowing how hard both of you work this time of year, I mean, you've got to be going through the same, worse probably than I am, because it's a 24/7 thing for you two.
It is, and we had a few tricks from the bag this week, but as the days unfold, and we hear news like the MLS today saying it's extending its hiatus, basically taking the end date off the hiatus, right? It went from 30 days to now no end date for this. And I know basketball and the NBA and the NHL also provided some target dates, but who knows what's going to happen now? And yeah, I know Vahe and I and Sam Mellinger and everybody here at the Star, we've all thought about how this is going to impact not only our jobs, but kind of the psyche of people who love sports, who thoroughly enjoy it, who just can't wait for the NCAA tournament, the opening day in baseball, the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and boy, I tell you, I think that again as the time passes, I think that the depth of feeling that we have for the games and writing about the games for us is, will just be felt in a way that we've never understood because we've never been in this situation.
I'm sure that that your experience on both sides of the state and your love of college basketball. I mean, this is just. I mean, I can only imagine you two in particular, because I so identify both of you with this time of year and college sports. But being people that like readers, I think of reliable people to go to, and I can't think of two more reliable people that I'd want to read than you two. But I mean, it's got to be just as painful as it is for Blair. I mean, this is an amazing time for us in this business.
It is, Kevin. I mean, it's a sort of sensory deprivation at a time where you're used to sensory overload is sort of the strangest part. And it's funny, you made me think of this. I just realized, I guess the first NCAA tournament game I ever went to in person was the 1988 national title game with Oklahoma and Kansas. I was just in my first month at the Post-Dispatch, and a friend got a ticket on the day of the game and said, "Want to see what the Final Four is like?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I came on over, and I guess I've been involved in the tournament somewhere or another every year since, probably 25-ish Final Fours, and I realize that's like 20 fewer than Blair. So we've really been at this a long time. And I will say this, we talked about this a little bit between ourselves earlier in the week. On Selection Sunday, I found myself needing to come to the paper just to come in. I drove around a little while. I thought about, why don't I go to see Naismith's grave? And I'm like, well, why would I do that? I don't know what to do. So it's been a little funny. But to Blair's point, there really has been also, I think, right now, front-loaded a lot of things still to think about and write about that are pertinent in sports. And, part of that is just how we're all processing the absence of it. And I think that's a really interesting part here. We sort of have talked casually among ourselves about, it hurts to not have sports. But I honestly worry that there's a looming broader mental health crisis, and that part of that will be emanating from this void that we don't have things that we're so used to.
I would venture to say that you see the numbers that watch the Super Bowl, the people that watch the tournament, that get involved in office pools. People always talk about that wonderful, opening day baseball game that kind of brings, the beginning of spring and summer and nice weather. And I think if you're a hockey fan or not, or an NBA fan or not, there's something very associated with the calendar and the change of seasons that we're all so used to. When it gets cold, you think, about, okay, here's college football and pro football. But when you think of spring, I've always thought about playoffs and hockey and the NBA, and the beginning of baseball, and the end of the tournament, or some parts of the tournament, and so this is just such an intersection of all those different avenues that it makes it painful. Now, if this is in the middle of June or July, there's only baseball really going on in golf, right? And maybe the Olympic year is upon us, but really, like, this hits at the most catastrophic of times in terms of not happening, because all these things are meeting at an head. The end of the NBA season, the beginning of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the beginning of the tournament, the start of baseball, and now you've got the year-round Goliath that is the NFL with, the just completed combine, the upcoming draft, the beginning of free agency and tagging players. I mean, it just goes on, and it's so funny how when that's taken away, you try to find a compass to focus. I mean, to be quite honest, for me personally, I've been ramping up handling taxes and making sure that that's all sealed up and delivered, which I'm ahead of schedule there, and finishing up expense reports that have been waiting to be handled, and doing that, and cleaning out. I've got 2 closets. The boss here at home is our COVID-19 commandant has told me to get on, and so we're cleaning out closets, and the other nice thing is we've welcomed most of our family back home to Kansas City. The girls and our son, they're back. They've all been told to stay home, so they're all kind of being with us, has made it for a very kind of this unexpected, nice little time with our family. So, it's funny when one thing closes, another opens, and I guess that's the most optimistic way to kind of look at this very different and weird time for all of us.
Kevin, I'd throw the Masters in there too as another one that we're going to miss.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Talk about a rite of spring. But hey, you brought it up, and I'm among us, but I'm curious to know what your first NCAA tournament game was, and the first year you worked the NCAA tournament, and maybe it's just some of the better games and characters that you've called and been associated with over the years.
Well, did Larry Brown's first year at Kansas. And I think we were up in Lincoln or Omaha, and I think Lincoln, and that's where Kansas went, and that was the 83-84 season, and did that year, and I think they lost to Wake Forest and Muggsy Bogues. Someone has to check that. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it seems like it might have been right, and but that was my first, and then I did 3 under Norm Stewart when I was doing the Missouri Tigers. And, of course, one year he wasn't there. Rich Daly had to take over, and they had made the Sweet 16. And that was really a treat. I remember doing the round of 32 winning game in Dallas, and Missouri was playing Texas in Reunion Arena, and no one had heard from Norm because he had collapsed on the flight down to Norman, Oklahoma during that season, and had to go to the emergency room, and so Rich Daly had taken over, and Rich Daly kind of engineered this team, kept the team together, and they made the Sweet 16, which was up in Minneapolis. But in that game down in Dallas, after the game, we got Norm on the Missouri Tiger Network on the phone, and he talked to us. I don't know if he was in his hospital bed or if he was home convalescing, but he came on with us, and it was one of the first times he had really talked about, his situation and how he was doing, and publicly, and that was very unique. And then I remember going up the next weekend to Minneapolis. They lost to, I think, Syracuse, and of course this was on the heels of losing the 2 previous years when Norm had some good teams and lost early. One year they lost to Rhode Island, I think, in Indianapolis, and then they went to Charlotte, North Carolina, lost the next year early on after being highly ranked and playing well. And then here, Norm wasn't there for that one season. They went to the Sweet 16, and they lost in the Sweet 16 to Syracuse. And as I recall, there was an incredible number of free throws taken by the Orange, and not as many taken by the Tigers in that game. And then I went to the NBA for a couple of years, and then joined CBS in '98, and that's when I began the tournament for them.
Kevin, one thing we mentioned the word calendar came up earlier, and this is just sort of a side point, but I've always been curious. You're very kind to say Blair and I are as busy as you, but I do not know anybody who moves around more than you do. Even when Norm was in Brewer Fieldhouse and kept moving around to avoid getting hit by pigeons, he wasn't moving around as much as you do. So I'm curious. Do you physically? Are you like perhaps two other people of the same vintage that maybe keep their calendars on their paper calendar, or do you have? Are you all electronic these days? I'm just curious how you know where you're supposed to be going.
Oh, I write it down. Oh no, I'm old school. I do both actually, but I do one as a backup, and I do it on my phone as a backup. But I every November order a academic calendar thing, and it's like the size of a small book, and write in all my games and on-air responsibilities in red. Write all my travel in green ink. All business-related things in black ink, and all family-related things in blue ink. I've got one of those multicolored pens that I use, and I use it when I'm in my broadcast, my week of preparation, and use it on the calendar too. And so I use one of those. And it's funny you mentioned that because a couple nights ago I started putting big X's through, first and second round of the tournament, Sweet 16 and Elite 8. Events that would be on my calendar. The second I would get the new one in late or mid-December for the upcoming year, knew the dates, wrote them in, write down the date of the Super Bowl because I'm fortunate enough to do that, and Championship Sunday in the NFL, and so it's weird to do that, and I do it as kind of a little bit of a I don't do a diary, or I don't know if you guys do or anything like that, but I do kind of like to have a very loose record of what I've got to do and what I did and where I was and where maybe my family was. That kind of, when I write it down like that, it's kind of therapeutic for me too. It kind of puts it down in writing, which I always think is a better way to remember and get it kind of galvanized in your mind than just typing it in and maybe even forgetting that you've done it.
I wonder how far back that goes. Does that go back to your high school days when you were on the 10-watt station?
Probably does, yeah. I always remember going to my dad's office, and he would have one of those monthly planners as his on his desk, but it was the big one that was like 2 feet by a foot or whatever, and it would have blocks for every day. And I remember as a little kid going into his office at Lambeau Field and seeing all these things, and his penmanship was always precise and very neat, and how he had, dates that were important in red, and I remember that, and not saying that's why I do it now in my book, but it just kind of becomes, I'm sure I learned a lot of things I do from him, and still do, but he always wrote that out, and so I guess, yeah, probably back to those early days when I was broadcasting and thinking about what I used to do is I used to do like games for our high school radio station, and then I would go home and my dad would listen to me, and I'd get back home, and he would have a list of things that he liked and things that maybe I should improve on. He was a journalism major at Marquette, and he was the editor of the student newspaper and sports editor. And so he went there to get a journalism degree, and those early conversations with him were just invaluable about who, what, when, where, how, and I mean all the things that great reporters like you two, do in every story you put together, and how you put a story together, and he said it's no different than doing something on air. But I do remember when I was thinking about becoming an airline pilot when I was about 11 or 12, and I brought home my report card. And at that time, you had to have good math grades. You had to be good in trig and math and geometry and calculus and all these, advanced math things. And here I was in about 6th, 7th, 8th grade, bringing home my math score from grade school and my report card, and he would look at the grade and then look at me and then look back down at the grade and then look at me again and goes, if it were up to me, I might think of a career in journalism. and that's what got me on this business that we're three of us are in right now.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
One of the things you just said reminded me of what an eventful few months you've had. I don't know if we refer to the one episode as the cat call, but certainly you had the double action going as the Chiefs were coming into the playoffs and then on into the Super Bowl. And I guess the highlight of that really is certainly for our audience, and I think you enjoyed it in a certain way because of your familiarity, just the run of the Chiefs. And that's how lucky Kansas City is that's its last prominent sports memory right now, that's if nothing else, that there's that for local people to hold on to and clutch dearly, really. I wonder if you could take us through how you followed that.
Well, yeah, then I'd love to. Of course, I read a lot what you guys did, but I'd love to hear it again. And now that it's had a chance to kind of sink in, but I can tell you that to me the most poignant thing was seeing Norma and Clark up on the stage holding their dad's trophy. I just thought that was like a surreal moment, and people that had, like the two of you that know them, know the history of what Lamar had done and the Hunt family for the NFL, and Norma had been to every single Super Bowl played, which is just remarkable, and truly one of the few people on earth that can say that. I just saw that a writer from New York, and his name escapes my mind now, and maybe I'll remember it. He had gone to every one, and this was the first one he did not attend. So Norma Hunt is in a very exclusive category here of having gone to every single Super Bowl. But for her to hold that trophy and not to give it to somebody else or be there representing the Hunt family, I thought was incredible. And then, after the way it ended last year with Brady and Belichick and the Patriot overtime win and being so close, and then having, the same game, different opponent, and then, as it turned out, being down again by double digits and coming back and winning, and just seeing the reaction of the crowd, mainly when I left, but certainly from our broadcast position way up in the press box where the three of us are for games, just seeing people just like, I just think it took a while to sink in, and hugging, season ticket holders next to them, and old and young, and man and wife, and and everything in between. It was just like, that was almost more compelling than seeing the players get up there. You see the players get up, they all kind of say the same stuff, but those two moments, and then again in the Super Bowl, they're down by double digits again, and they come back and win, which is just so incredible. And but Blair, what'd you feel? Like, you've been around as long as I have, and Ty, you too. As things have, as you processed over these last month or whatever it's been since that date in Miami, what that run in January. What have you guys thought?
Well, one thing I'll quick interject because I don't want to forget it is I've thought that I don't know how you came up with that four tops line for the Rose Bowl right parade formation. That was one of my highlights in listening back to the game.
You had to be a man of a certain age, I believe, to.
Yes, thank you very much. That's exactly right.
But Blair, what were you going to say?
Oh, I guess I felt somewhat similar to 5 years ago when the Royals won, and with the Royals and now with the Chiefs, I found myself coming to appreciate the championships of franchises that have had long-suffering fans, and not just here, but it was actually the Royals that got me thinking about, well, how great is it now that the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Washington Caps and the St. Louis Blues and the Philadelphia Eagles all got to share their championship with fans who haven't had a parade or been able to celebrate in a way that the Royals did 5 years ago. And I felt that way about Chiefs fans too. The 49ers were a terrific team and a total worthy opponent. But San Francisco doesn't need another parade. I mean, they've had a few. After Boston, I can't think of a city that's had more in the last decade, right? And or at least 15, 20 years. And I felt so good for Chiefs fans. And we're talking about fans you count in generations. And it was my grandfather's team and my father's team, and now it's my team, and that's what I have come to really like about these championships from teams that haven't won one in a while, and yet now we're talking about, well, how many can they win? With this quarterback and this coach, and maybe it'll be a while for the Chargers and the Bills and some of the other long-suffering franchises to get there.
And Kevin, I'll just say I one of the joys of our job, I think, is when you do feel like you're somehow enmeshed or connected with the city when these things go on. It's just you feel like you get to be a conduit, and so maybe you get to feel it that way. And certainly, what your neighbors are feeling and your friends and Blair and I have talked about this before, but I can't think of a place that had been longer suffering in multiple ways in terms of sports than Kansas City in the early 2010s. I mean, I think as of 2013, I think this is right, the Chiefs had not won a playoff game in almost 20 years, and the Royals hadn't so much as been in the postseason in 28 years. That's a pretty tough combo, and I guess there must be other cities that have had that 1-2 punch, but not many cities that just have the two majors among the four. So I think it's been pretty uplifting time. And I think if you count Sporting's championship, I saw the stats somewhere. I haven't independently verified. Maybe Blair knows, but maybe no city has had championships in 3 of the 5 major leagues in that time frame other than Kansas City. So that's City of Champions.
Well, it sure is fun for the three of us to be able to chronicle whatever parts we chronicle, and you guys are covering multiple sports, and you get a chance to be around the way teams operate, and you get to know people, and friendships do happen, and that's kind of the nice part of our job. And there are other parts that aren't so nice, and that's reporting on teams that lose. It's hard to. We love the job. I mean, we love the business, and that's why you're in it. You're not in the business to cover champions. You're in the business because first and foremost, we love the business. But if you can have an event that makes it special, if you can have something that gives it definition, that like I think of Joe McGuff. And I think about, him covering Hank Stram, Joe McGuff, the really famous Kansas City Star, sports editor and columnist for so many years, and who got to cover Stram and Lenny and the Chiefs back then. And I remember I was getting out out of college at KU in the early 80s, having Joe McGuff on our Chiefs pregame show, talking about, what was it like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, covering that team, and he would talk about these things, and it was so foreign to us at that time because the Chiefs in the 80s, as we know, were not very good. End of the 70s into the 80s, they were not a good team, had a hard time drawing, and but you're not, we're not in it for that. But I was thinking that I'm sure Joe McGuff appreciated the fact that he was there to be the hometown writer for a Super Bowl champion. And just like the two of you would say, yeah, it was fun to cover a team that won a Super Bowl, because when you win, there's so many things that have got to fall right. There's so many little stories along the way that make the big story. And a free agent decision, an injury that had to be filled, a certain play in a game that was pivotal at that time of the year. And writers know that better than anybody, because you cover every snap and practice and game of that team, which begins in the summer and ends who knows when in the winter. So to be a part of something that does work, eventually does reach its destination, is really a neat thing to say that you've covered. Not a lot of people can say they've covered a Super Bowl champion or a World Series champion. And the two of you can, and I'm lucky enough from afar to do. I did the Eagles a couple of years ago, did all the Patriot Super Bowls, or a lot of them over here the last couple of years. The Giants Super Bowls they won there with Coughlin, and so I mean I've had a chance, but I would tell you it is a little different to cover a team that you once did and see them finally after 50 years not only make it to that game but win it. And while I wasn't there for every snap and every play of the season, the great thing about when you're a writer doing it in the newspaper business, and putting out publications daily, is that you are a part of that story, and you can't help but feel connected to it in some way. And I think that all three of us, but you two in particular, will look back in your careers and say, wasn't it great that I got to be witness to a World Series champion, 2 straight World Series, and a champion in one of them, and then be a part of this historic Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl. I mean, that a lot of guys go and they like players. They never win a championship. They never play in a champion. And here you guys have covered a couple here in the last 5-6 years. And how special is that? I mean, for your career, we're not in it for that, like I began saying, but it sure makes it more interesting, and it can't help but make it more fulfilling. It can't help it.
Well, luckily, I'll speak for myself here. Luckily, I enjoy being around Blair, so we've got that going for us too. So we've got that. But I know we should let you get going. But I guess the question is, what are you going to do? We know some of it with the garage waiting, and luckily you've got your family there. But just in the kind of more cosmic sense, how do you feel like you're going to go into these next few weeks? Just your own state of mind, Kevin.
Well, I guess I can't, if I knew the season were over, then I could really let my mind go to mush, because then I know that my next broadcast wouldn't be until August when I do the Packers preseason. But with the looming NBA, you were just talking a minute ago about, indefinite suspension, or the league, NBA put a 30-day suspension, which I think is going to come and go, and they're going to extend it, obviously. But I think that I've got to I can't let my guard go down too much, because I may be back in the saddle again here in the next, month or month and a half. What has always happened when if the seasons were finished, is I would go into the studio for a handful of weeks and start recording the NBA video, the 2K NBA. This year, the NBA 2K21, and that takes many weeks, many hours, and that will consume my non-official on the clock work time. But until then, I'm just going to enjoy the kids being home and know this is a special time that we have together as a family, and kind of gives, I think, a little perspective to all of us. And I think a little perspective is good from time to time, especially for the kids that we have, their ages, 30 and under, and just kind of beginning this chapter of their lives, and kind of hearing what they think about what it's like to have things taken away, because a lot of these kids their age had not had things taken away. They were too young to remember 9/11. They weren't fazed by the meltdown of '08. And so now they've got this to face, and this is affecting everybody in the country, in the world. And so this is an interesting time to see how they're kind of processing all this. And it's unique as a parent, I think, to be around that and to kind of help them, with thoughts and ideas, and help them kind of navigate this. And then that's parenting never ends, right? What do they say? The moment your wife becomes pregnant, from that day on, you'll think of that child every day of their lives, and that's kind of how it is. Your mind never wavers from them and what they're going through and how they're looking at the world.
Kevin, I do promise to let you go, but when you mentioned 911, it made me realize something we chatted about briefly before. That was maybe the last time work came off your table. Obviously in the trauma and emergency of the situation, but I guess there's a difference. Obviously, many differences between that and that time and this. And part of this, of course, is the vagueness itself. I wonder if when you compare the thoughts in your mind, how that looks.
Well, in that, the NFL canceled. It was early in the season. The NFL had canceled that weekend's games, and then they played the following weekend. That was a weekend, as I know Chiefs fans remember, when the Giants came here to play Kansas City. And, of course, the destruction, the deaths, the tragedy had happened in their town. So Kansas City had a kind of a unique relationship with that first NFL Sunday, because the Giants were in town. Our assignment that day was in Dallas. We had the Cowboys in Dallas. And I remember they made every broadcaster have to get on the PA system and read some lines leading into the pregame ceremonies, flyovers and pageantry on the field, moments of silence. That for whatever reason they had the network play-by-play guys read a lot of these intros and outros to that day. And I can remember looking at the sheet when I got to Dallas on that Friday afternoon. My wife came with me, and looking at all the different things that I had to do, and I was almost more concerned about that and hoping that I had the right tone in my voice, because it was not only heard in the stadium. This is at the old Cowboys Stadium in Irving, but also we had a big audience. So it was a very different time. There was no fanfare. You covered events that weekend and that week leading up to it, I know, but it's just very, very different feeling, different than this. Not that there wouldn't, there was a sense of so much unknown, because all the things we know now, we didn't know, a week or 10 days or 2 weeks after it had happened. We had an inkling what was going on. We knew that there was this plot. We knew that, but with the depth and the names and the faces, and I don't think all that yet had been as known as we've known, these 19 years later. But this is a different kind of enemy, as our president has said, and others have said, in different parts of government. This is the unseen enemy that we don't know how to combat. We're dealing with it with the brightest minds in the country and in the world, and we're all kind of as a globe all together. Whereas then it was just kind of the United States had been attacked, and it had a different feel to it. So eerie, surreal, but part of life, and who knows what our parents and their parents and their parents' parents had felt with the world wars and all that, and the atom bomb and the Cuban Missile Crisis. So many benchmark moments in the history of this country, but certainly the same feeling that we're having right now in this country about the unknown and what it's going to bring.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for making this time, and I think anybody who gets to listen to this, or we get to relay this through writing about it, will be have their thoughts provoked and also be have their days get a little more light in them. It just can't thank you enough for making this time, Kevin.
Listen, I thank you for asking me, Blair, and I've loved your work over the years, and I'll go back to something I said earlier on. But the work that newspapers, magazines, publications do will always be the backbone of all of media. And you may hear a voice and see a face and hear a voice on TV, but know that 90% of the work, that the stories that we talk about come from the hard work of journalists that write, report, and keep close the very pillars of this business that we're in, and it's a very unweighted, unbalanced view sometimes in terms of recognition and everything else. But there are many that feel like I do, and that being on with two people like yourselves that represent the best of this business it's an honor for me to be on, and I have so much respect for how hard both of you work and your colleagues work, and what I hope is, I said this to Vahe, Blair, I said I hope we can get a monthly lunch together, the three of us, and we can bring other people along, but maybe we'll just put the microphone in the middle. We'll just kind of do a quick update, but I'll be asking the questions then, and I'll be eating while you answer.
Hey, that sounds great. Here's hoping to that kind of arrangement in a safe environment. Well, that'll do it for today and this week on SportsBeat KC. This show can't happen without the team of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Thanks to Kevin Harlan for being so generous with his time, and to my compadre, Vahe Gregorian. Be sure to read his column on Kevin. We'll be back next week for more episodes of SportsBeat KC. A final word. Let's apply a lesson we hear so often from coaches and athletes, at least we do in the sports media world. It translates to roughly control what you can control. In these times that have altered our routines, be kind, be neighborly, help a family member or friend or neighbor who needs it. Another phrase we see on athletes' t-shirts, tough times don't last, tough people do. It's a good time to be determined to do what it takes to ride this out. Lastly, hey, we're looking to come up with topics and ideas for future podcasts. Tell me what you'd like to hear. Send me an email at bkerkhoff@kcstar.com. That's B as in Blair, KERKHOFF @kcstar.com. Let me know what's on your mind. As always, thanks for listening.